Hello, beautiful people. Today's story takes you to a quiet lake in Windmere, where six old friends reunite after years apart. But what begins as a peaceful trip slowly turns into something no one saw coming. The trip to Windmere. It all started on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Six old university friends had been talking in a group chat for weeks, trying to find a time when everyone was free. Work, life, and small problems had kept them apart for 8 long years. They had promised to meet again many times, but plans always fell through. Finally, after endless messages and jokes about never meeting again, they agreed. A short trip together. Just a few days to relax, talk, and remember old times. "Okay, I promise this will be fun," Tom typed. "No drama, no boring plans. Just laughs, food, and maybe a little adventure." Tom was the same as always, the light-hearted one who joked through everything. He worked as a designer now, though no one really understood what he actually did. He was the one who kept the group chat alive, always sending memes and funny comments when everyone else was quiet. "Adventure," Marcus replied. "I think you mean chaos." Marcus, on the other hand, hadn't changed much either. Confident, clever, and a little arrogant, he had become a lawyer. He liked to plan everything and secretly believed no one else could do it better. Tom sent a line of laughing emojis. "Chaos is fun. You'll thank me later." Hannah wrote next, carefully. "I'm just happy to see everyone. It doesn't matter where we go." Hannah was the organized one, thoughtful, kind, and practical. She worked in marketing now, always keeping things balanced. Years ago, she and Luke had dated for a long time. Everyone knew about it. Their breakup had been quiet but difficult, and even now, no one mentioned it directly. Luke stayed quiet for a while, scrolling through the messages. He was a journalist these days, working long hours and writing about people's stories. He had changed the most, calmer now, more observant, and a little distant, as if he carried something he never talked about. Finally, he wrote, "I can drive. I know a nice place by a lake. Not too far, peaceful, and not crowded." Zara replied with a small picture of her camera. "I'm in. A quiet place is perfect." Zara was a travel photographer, always moving from one city to another. She was kind but distant, the one who often disappeared for months on photography trips. No one ever really knew where she was, but she always returned with beautiful pictures and a calm smile. Ava was the last to reply. "Sounds good. I can handle the planning for food and small stuff." Ava was a nurse, quiet but emotionally strong. She didn't talk much, but when she did, people listened. She had a soft, steady way of handling everyone's moods, the sort of friend who noticed what others didn't say. And just like that, the plan was set. 6 friends, 1 car, and a few days away from their busy lives. The week before the trip was filled with messages again, but this time about packing, snacks, and responsibilities. "I don't want to hear classical music," Tom wrote. "We need upbeat songs." No exceptions. "Upbeat songs?" Marcus replied. "If you put on one more of those pop hits, I'm switching to the radio." Hannah laughed in the group chat. "I'll make a playlist. We don't need a fight before we even start." Luke added, "You still argue like it's university days." "Old habits die hard," Ava texted with a laughing emoji. Tom replied, "At least some things never change." They all laughed, even Marcus. It felt good to have this kind of energy again. But under the humor, there was a quiet feeling that things were different now. Everyone had grown up, and life had pulled them in separate directions. Zara didn't say much in the chat. She was busy checking her camera bag. Extra batteries, lenses, memory cards, and the small notebook she always carried. She read through the messages once, smiled faintly, and typed, "Don't forget to pack a jacket. It might get cold there." Tom sent a thumbs up. "Noted, Mom." Luke noticed her silence. He sent her a private message. "Are you okay? You seem quiet lately." "I'm fine," she replied after a few seconds. "Just busy. Don't worry." Luke read it twice. He didn't push further. Zara had always been like that, saying less, feeling more. Meanwhile, Hannah was making a checklist. Snacks, medicine, water bottles, power banks. She liked being prepared. But when she saw Luke's name in the chat, her fingers froze for a moment. It had been years since she'd spent time with him. She told herself it didn't matter anymore. It was just a trip with friends. Still, a small, nervous thought stayed in the back of her mind. Marcus, on the other hand, was taking charge of directions. "I'll bring the printed map. GPS is fine, but never trust it completely." Tom replied, "Who even prints maps anymore?" "Responsible people," Marcus shot back. Ava smiled at the screen. She could already imagine their arguments in the car. Tom joking too much, Marcus correcting everyone, Hannah trying to calm them down, and Luke quietly focusing on the road. And Zara. She would probably sit by the window, camera in hand, watching the world pass by. The morning of the trip arrived with golden light spilling through the sky. Luke's apartment was the meeting point. One by one they arrived, sleepy but excited. Tom was first, dragging a huge bag. "Don't judge me," he said quickly. "It's not that heavy." "Wow, Tom," Marcus said, raising an eyebrow. "That bag looks heavier than your whole body." Tom grinned. "Snacks, games, books, and emergency chocolate. I'm prepared for anything." Hannah, standing beside the car, smiled. At least someone remembered water. "Of course." Tom replied proudly. 3 liters. Luke came out of the building, locking his door. "All right," he said, smiling faintly. "Everyone ready?" "Yes," they all said together. As they packed the car, small laughter filled the air. Marcus neatly arranged the bags in the trunk while Tom just threw his inside. Ava handed out sandwiches she made for the road. Zara stood quietly, taking a photo of the moment, everyone smiling in the morning light. When Luke looked at Hannah, she smiled politely. They hadn't spoken properly since university. It wasn't cold between them, just distant. A quiet space that words couldn't fill. They started driving, soft music playing in the background. The highway stretched ahead, lined with trees. Slowly, the city noise faded behind them. Conversation came easily at first. Small jokes, stories about work, and memories of old times. "Do you remember our first exam week?" Hannah said, laughing. "I think I hardly slept." Tom groaned. "And Marcus made it worse. He studied all night and made us feel guilty." Marcus smirked. "Some people like to party. I like to pass." "Still dramatic," Tom said, shaking his head. Luke drove steadily, listening, smiling quietly now and then. He felt something light inside him, a feeling he hadn't had in a long time. Zara sat by the window, snapping pictures of passing fields and houses. Ava leaned closer. "You never miss a moment, do you?" Zara smiled softly. "Sometimes small things tell the best stories." The car moved through winding country roads, with sunlight falling through the trees. They sang, argued about music again, and laughed at Tom's bad jokes. For a while it felt like the old days. After a few hours, they stopped at a small cafe by the roadside. It had wooden chairs, warm light, and the smell of bread. They ordered coffee, tea, and sandwiches. Everyone looked relaxed. Then, of course, Tom tried to joke while holding his cup and spilled it all over the table. "Oops," he said, laughing, grabbing napkins. Marcus sighed but helped him clean it up. "You need to be more careful." "It's fine, Marcus," Hannah said. "It's just coffee." Zara took a photo of the mess, smiling faintly. "Perfect for a story," she said. Even small accidents made them laugh. It reminded them of old times, the silly, easy moments that used to fill their days. By late afternoon, they reached Windmere, a quiet village surrounded by trees and hills. The lake shimmered in the distance. The guest house stood near the water, small but beautiful, with white walls and wooden beams. An elderly couple greeted them. "Welcome. You'll enjoy your stay," said Mrs. Dalton warmly. Inside, the rooms were simple but cozy. Marcus unpacked neatly while Tom couldn't figure out the closet. Hannah arranged her things carefully. Ava checked if everyone had towels. Zara stood near the window, taking in the soft light over the lake. Luke came to stand beside her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. She nodded. "It feels peaceful here." That evening they cooked together in the small kitchen. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air. Laughter echoed as Tom almost dropped the pan, and Marcus corrected everyone's technique. "Tom, you almost burned the pasta water again," Marcus said. Tom grinned. "I like to live on the edge." Luke smiled while stirring the sauce. Hannah, beside him, handed him a spoon. Their hands brushed slightly. She looked away quickly. He didn't say anything, but he noticed. Ava set the table. Zara took pictures of the group, of small smiles and the orange glow of the lamps. After dinner, they sat outside near the lake. The air was cool, the water still. The sky turned pink and gray. Then Luke saw something, a faint light flickering across the lake. It disappeared behind the trees. "Probably just someone walking," Marcus said casually. But Luke wasn't sure. Hannah followed his gaze, her smile fading. A moment later, Zara's phone rang. She jumped, quickly turning it off. Luke noticed her face, a flicker of worry. But she smiled again when she saw him looking. Late that night, Luke couldn't sleep. He stepped outside for some air. The lake was calm, almost black under the moonlight. He stood by the edge, listening. The only sound was the wind and soft water ripples. Then he heard it, faint but clear, a phone ringing somewhere near the lake. He frowned, looking around. A shape moved behind the trees, a quick shadow, then silence. When he looked up, the light in Zara's room was still on. He hesitated, then knocked softly on her door. No answer. Something about the stillness felt wrong. Luke stood quietly outside the guest house, the cool night air brushing against his face. The lake looked calm but dark, like a mirror that had swallowed all the light. The faint ringing he had heard moments ago had stopped, yet it still echoed in his mind. He waited for a while, eyes fixed on the trees across the water. Something about the silence felt strange, not peaceful but empty. Finally, he shook his head and went back toward the house. Most of the lights inside were off. Everyone must have gone to sleep. Only one room still glowed faintly, Zara's. He walked over and knocked softly. "Zara!" No reply. He knocked again, a little louder. "You awake?" Still nothing. He hesitated, listening for any sound inside, footsteps, movement, anything. But all he heard was the wind brushing past the windows. He thought about knocking again but decided not to. Maybe she had fallen asleep with the light on. He sighed, walked back to his room, and sat on the bed for a moment, staring at the curtain moving slightly in the night air. For some reason, he couldn't shake off the feeling that something was not right. The next morning started bright and quiet. Sunlight poured through the windows, lighting up the kitchen table where Tom was already standing with a frying pan. "Morning, people," he called out, flipping an omelet. "Breakfast hero reporting for duty." Marcus groaned from his seat. "You call that breakfast? You're burning it already." "It's not burnt. It's golden," Tom said proudly, waving his spatula. Hannah smiled sleepily as she came in. "Smells good enough." "Morning, everyone." Luke entered next, his face a little serious. "Morning," he said shortly. Ava followed, holding her coffee mug. "Did anyone see Zara?" "She's not in her room." Tom looked up. "Still sleeping, maybe?" "She was up late, right?" Luke shook his head. "Her light was on when I went to bed, but she didn't answer when I knocked." Hannah frowned a little. "Maybe she went out to take pictures. You know how she loves morning light." "Yeah, probably," Tom said, trying to sound cheerful. Marcus looked at his watch. "If she's gone for photos, she should be back soon. It's nearly 9. They waited for a while, talking about plans for the day. But an hour passed and Zara still didn't come back. Luke went upstairs to check again. Her room looked exactly the same, neat, quiet, untouched. Her bag was open, her camera lenses neatly lined up, but her main camera and phone were missing. Her shoes were gone too. "She's definitely outside," Tom said from behind him. Luke nodded slowly but didn't look convinced. Something about the room felt too clean, as if she had left quickly. They decided to go and look near the lake. The morning sun sparkled on the surface of the water. Birds chirped from the trees and the air was cool. Everything looked peaceful, yet Luke's chest felt heavy. They followed the small path leading down to the wooden deck. There, the ground was slightly wet and faint footprints were visible. "Looks like she was here," Hannah said softly. But the prints stopped at the very edge of the deck. Beyond that, nothing. Just still water. "Maybe she walked around?" Ava suggested, looking left and right. Marcus shook his head. "No prints going anywhere else." Luke crouched near the edge, looking down. The water was calm, reflecting the sky. He felt uneasy again. They searched for her around the nearby paths, calling her name several times. A few villagers looked on curiously as they walked past, asking if everything was okay. One of them, an older man carrying a fishing basket, said, "You mean the lady with the camera? She walked by early this morning. I saw her near the bridge road around 6. Didn't look in a hurry." "Did you see where she went?" Luke asked quickly. The man shook his head. "No, I went the other way." But she was alone. They thanked him and returned to the guest house, their faces showing quiet worry now. Mrs. Dalton, the old lady who owned the guest house, came to the door when she saw them. "Oh, you're looking for your friend?" "She went out early. Said she wanted to take pictures of the morning light." "I thought she was with you." Hannah's voice was soft. "No, she didn't tell anyone." "Oh dear," Mrs. Dalton said kindly. "I'm sure she'll be back soon. The village is small. Maybe she went toward the old pier." But Luke didn't feel convinced. He turned to the group. "Let's check the pier just in case." They reached the pier around noon. The air was warmer now, and the water shimmered under the sun. A few ducks floated lazily nearby. Everything looked normal, peaceful even, until Tom suddenly stopped. "What's that?" he said, pointing to something near the reeds by the edge. Luke rushed over. It was a light blue scarf, half wet, tangled among the plants. "That's Zara's," Ava whispered, recognizing it at once. Hannah covered her mouth. "Oh no." Luke picked it up carefully. It was cold and smelled faintly of lake water. "She wouldn't leave this behind," he said quietly. Marcus tried to stay calm. "Maybe it just fell. Maybe she dropped it while taking pictures." Tom looked around nervously. "Then where is she now?" Nobody answered. The air around them seemed to grow still. They went back to the guest house, unsure what to do next. Everyone sat around the table, their earlier excitement gone. The laughter and teasing from yesterday now felt far away. "I think we should call the police," Hannah said at last. Marcus nodded slowly. "If she's not back by afternoon, yes." Luke stood by the window, staring out at the trees. "There's something we're missing," he said. "What do you mean?" Ava asked. He hesitated. "Last night when I was outside, I saw a light on the other side of the lake. And I heard something, a phone ringing. I thought it was nothing but—" Everyone looked at him silently. "Are you saying you think she's there?" Tom asked quietly. "I don't know," Luke admitted. "But it's the same sound I heard last night." Before anyone could respond, a faint ring echoed again. Soft, distant, coming from somewhere near the woods. All of them froze. The sound lasted only a few seconds, then stopped. Hannah whispered, "That's her ringtone, isn't it?" Luke's heart raced. "Yes," he said, already stepping toward the door. The others followed him outside, eyes scanning the trees beyond the lake. The air felt different now, colder, even under the bright afternoon sun. The ringing didn't come again. Only the sound of leaves rustling. But Luke was sure. The sound had come from across the water. And as he stared at the far side of the lake, a strange feeling crept over him. The same one he'd felt the night before, when he thought he saw a shadow there. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, holding Zara's scarf tightly in his hand, staring across the water. Something was there. Something waiting. And deep down Luke knew their trip to Windmere had just turned into something they didn't expect. Luke stood at the edge of the lake, Zara's blue scarf still in his hand. The air was cold and still, and the others stood behind him in silence. Nobody knew what to say. Finally, Hannah spoke quietly. "We should go there. Across the lake." Marcus frowned. "That's not safe. It's already late afternoon. We should wait for the police." "Wait!" Luke turned to him sharply. "We've already waited half the day. What if she's hurt?" Tom hesitated. "Luke's right. We can't just sit here." Mrs. Dalton came out of the guest house, looking worried. "I called the local police," she said. "They'll be here soon. Please don't go wandering too far. The woods can be confusing, and the light fades fast." They thanked her and waited outside. It took almost 40 minutes before a small police car pulled up. 2 officers stepped out, a middle-aged man with calm eyes and a younger woman carrying a notepad. "Good afternoon," the older officer said gently. "I'm Inspector Hall. We heard about your missing friend." Luke quickly explained everything. Zara's early walk, the scarf near the lake, and the phone ringing sound they had heard. The inspector listened carefully, nodding now and then. "All right," he said after a moment. "We'll start by checking the other side of the lake. One of you can come with us, just to point the spot." Luke immediately stepped forward. "I'll go." The path around the lake was rough and narrow. Branches brushed their arms as they walked, and small stones rolled under their shoes. The inspector led the way, while Luke followed closely behind. The others stayed at the guest house, waiting. When they reached the far side, the air felt heavier somehow, quieter, darker. The trees grew close together, blocking most of the sunlight. "Show me where you saw the light last night," the inspector said. Luke pointed toward a small clearing near the water. "There. Right around there." They walked closer, pushing through the low branches. At first they found nothing, just leaves and damp ground. But then the younger officer called out softly, "Sir, over here." Luke hurried over. Near the roots of an old tree lay a small black phone. It was Zara's. The screen was cracked, the case slightly muddy. Luke froze. "That's hers," he whispered. The inspector carefully picked it up using a cloth. "We'll take this," he said calmly. "There are no signs of a struggle here, but she may have dropped it. We'll search this area properly." Luke felt his chest tighten. He wanted to keep looking, but the inspector placed a hand on his shoulder. "Go back for now," he said gently. "We'll contact you if we find anything." Back at the guest house, everyone was tense. Hannah sat on the couch, her hands clasped tightly. Ava tried to comfort her, while Marcus stood by the window, restless. When Luke returned, everyone looked at him. "Did you find her?" Ava asked quickly. He shook his head. "Just her phone." No one spoke for a long moment. The room felt too quiet, except for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Finally, Tom broke the silence. "She wouldn't just leave like this, would she?" Hannah looked up. "No, she wouldn't." Marcus sighed. "Maybe there's something she didn't tell us." "What do you mean?" Hannah asked. He hesitated. "I mean, she was acting strange even before we came here. Quiet. Nervous. Maybe there's something going on in her life we don't know." Luke nodded slightly. "She told me she wanted peace. That's all. But..." She looked worried. Ava whispered, "Do you think someone followed her?" No one answered. The idea hung in the air like smoke. The police searched the woods until sunset. They came back just before dark, tired and empty-handed. Inspector Hall spoke gently. "No signs of her yet. We'll continue tomorrow morning. Don't wander out tonight. Stay together." Everyone nodded quietly. After dinner, the group sat in the living room, the atmosphere heavy. Tom tried to lighten the mood. "Maybe she's just somewhere safe. Maybe she'll walk in tomorrow morning and laugh at us for worrying." But nobody laughed. After a while, Marcus excused himself and went upstairs. Luke noticed he looked tense, his jaw tight. Later that night, as Luke went up to his room, he heard voices behind Marcus's door. It sounded like he was talking on the phone. "I told you I'll handle it. Just don't call me again here." Luke stopped for a second, listening quietly. Marcus's tone was low but sharp. Then the door opened suddenly. Marcus froze when he saw Luke standing in the hall. "Oh," Marcus said quickly, pretending to sound casual. "Just a work call." Luke didn't respond. He nodded slightly and walked away. But a strange thought entered his mind. Marcus had been nervous since the morning. The next day, the police came again at sunrise. They divided into 2 teams, one checking the forest, the other talking to villagers. Luke joined the first team. Hours passed with no sign of Zara. The woods seemed endless, and every sound, every crack of a branch made Luke turn. Back at the guest house, Hannah found herself pacing restlessly. Ava sat nearby, staring at the scarf on the table. I can't stop thinking about her, Ava said softly. Do you remember how she was smiling last night? She seemed fine. Hannah nodded. Maybe she was pretending. She always hides her feelings. Tom sighed, leaning against the wall. We all do that sometimes. Just then, Marcus came down from upstairs, looking pale. He held something in his hand, Zara's small camera. Where did you get that? Luke asked when he came back. Marcus hesitated. I found it in her bag. I was checking if it had anything useful for the police. He handed it to Luke. The camera was covered in dust, but it still worked. Luke turned it on and began scrolling through the photos. There were pictures of the lake, trees, the group laughing at dinner. Normal, peaceful moments. Then he stopped. The last photo was different. It showed the edge of the lake at dusk. Zara must have taken it from her room window. But in the corner of the frame, half hidden behind the trees, there was a faint figure, a man's shadow. Luke's heart raced. Look at this, he said, showing the others. Hannah leaned closer. Who is that? Marcus swallowed hard. It could be anyone. The inspector came in just then, noticing the tension. Luke handed him the camera. This was taken last night, he said. The inspector studied it carefully. We'll check this area again, he said. You've been very helpful. He left with the camera, but the silence that followed felt heavy. That night, everyone gathered in the living room again. They were tired, worried, and quiet. Marcus sat apart from the group, staring at the floor. Finally he spoke, his voice low. There's something I need to say. Everyone looked at him. He took a deep breath. Before this trip, Zara and I had a disagreement. About money. She lent me some 2 years ago when I was in trouble and I never paid her back. She reminded me about it last week. I told her I'd bring it this trip, but I forgot. That's why I was nervous. And my wallet is missing. Tom frowned. You think she took it? Marcus shook his head quickly. No, I don't think that. I don't know. It's strange. Luke sat quietly thinking. Things were starting to make sense. Zara's worry, Marcus's tension, and the phone call last night. But he still couldn't understand what really happened. The next morning, there was a sudden knock on the door. Inspector Hall entered, his expression calm but serious. We found her, he said. Everyone stood up at once. Is she all right? Hannah asked, her voice shaking. She's alive, the inspector said gently. She's shaken but safe. A local farmer found her near the old bus stop at the edge of the woods. She had fainted, probably from exhaustion. Ava gasped with relief. Thank God. Within an hour, Zara was brought back to the guest house. Her face was pale, her clothes slightly dirty, but she was conscious. When she saw them, tears filled her eyes. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to scare anyone. Hannah hugged her gently. You scared us half to death. Zara nodded weakly. I just needed to think. When I went out that morning, I saw someone I knew, my ex, Daniel. He had followed me here. He wanted to talk. I panicked. That's why I dropped my phone and ran into the woods. I didn't know what to do. I hid there until I got lost. Luke looked at her softly. You should have told us. I didn't want to ruin the trip, she said quietly. I thought I could handle it. Later that day, after the police finished questioning everyone, the group sat together outside by the lake. The air was calm again, the water still. Marcus apologized to Zara, promising to pay her back and make things right. Tom cracked a few light jokes to ease the mood, and Ava finally smiled again. Luke and Hannah sat a little apart, watching the sunlight on the water. "Strange trip," Hannah said softly. Luke nodded. "Yeah. But maybe we needed it. Sometimes, life brings us back together in ways we don't expect." She smiled faintly. Maybe it was meant to happen, all of this. They sat in silence, the wind moving gently around them, carrying away the tension of the past days. For the first time since they arrived, the lake truly looked peaceful. And though none of them would ever forget what happened at Windmere, they all knew one thing. They would leave stronger, closer, and somehow more honest than before. And that was their trip to Windmere, a calm place that held more secrets than they imagined, and a story they would never forget.